All right. Hi, everyone. Very, very good evening to all of you. Prashant here once again for training session two. Sorry, I'm a couple of minutes late by mistake. Actually, I started the training session three by error. So, just to let you know, I'm going to share with you all an updated link for session three. Which will reach you post this entire session. But hi, everyone. Feeling much better today, to be honest with you, as opposed to yesterday's horrific cough. Really excited to walk you through training session two. Hope you all did your the little bit of homework that I told you all yesterday. By any chance, in the chat box, can you all see and hear me clearly? If you could put up a thumbs up or maybe a heart to let me know if you could hear and see me clearly out here. Yes, feeling much better, Akhil. I really appreciate that. So wonderful. Now that we can hear and see each other, I'm glad that we've all got a chance to connect once again. Coming to the things that I asked you to do, just by maybe a quick poll, do you think something like that is possible? Did you do? Did you do the tasks I asked you to do yesterday? Okay, let's see how the polling essentially works. Whilst you'll vote, I shall pull up the rules of procedure for today's schedule of what I've planned to walk you through through today rather. So today we're going to focus on the different debate rules and we're going to be focusing on the paperwork primarily. This is what we're essentially going to do. I'm so glad to see such a healthy response from the poll as well. I'm sure that it's going to go a long way in helping you all in terms of your research, in terms of your preparations before you'll come to the conference and give you all a lot more information and content, while you're speaking committee. I've also been informed that during many sessions, internet is not going to be provided. However, you do have electronic devices, so save your documents and data for your offline access as well. Coming to today's session, what are we going to be covering? I'd request you all to open up your rules of procedure, the updated rules of procedure in which you would have received on mail with your allotments, the updated rules of procedure. We're going to be focusing on point number 13 to point number 23 to begin with, which is essentially the debate rules. Yesterday, I gave you an insight into how the entire structure of MUN is, how essentially the executive board is there, what is your role and responsibility in the committee, and I also touched upon the different points that are there in the conference as well. This time, however, we're going to be focusing on something which is called the different debate rules. Debate rules are essentially different tools that enable us to discuss with one another. S.A. Yathur, sir, will you answer questions? Yes, S.A. Yathur, I shall surely answer questions, but just not today. I will answer any and all questions tomorrow. Tomorrow's the day. I am not going to speak about anything apart from the questions that you present to me. I will answer each and every one of them. For those of you who missed out on yesterday's session, it is saved in our YouTube channel of Hearts MUN, so you can view it at your own convenience as well. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll have many questions. Note them down, keep it written down, maybe save it on your notepad on your computers or maybe in your notebooks, wherever comfortable. And tomorrow in our doubt solving session is when I'll be happy to answer any and all questions for the Hearts MUN 2025. I'm having a black coffee actually. I call it diesel very fondly. It's keeps me active, keeps me going, and I do enjoy it from time to time. But nonetheless, like I said, let's begin with what we set out to do today. The first thing that's basically going to happen when committee officially begins. All right. So, like how you have roll call, which we studied about or learned about or understood rather yesterday, we start with something which is called attendance. What is attendance? Much like your school attendance is how it works in the MUN as well as the actual United Nations as well. So essentially, the number of delegates to begin committee proceedings should be at least 1/4 of the total committee strength. Basically, what does this mean? That once the chairperson and vice chairperson are seated in their on their desks, inside the committee, it is essential that 1/4 of the participants or delegates of that committee must be physically present for committee to officially begin. So if you have maybe 20 students, you must have at least 6 students to begin healthy discussions in the committee. However, like I said, this is not a problem as such, but it's more like a mere formality that we'll be doing to officially initiate our sessions at large. The next thing is something called setting an agenda. So before I talk about this, I want to talk to you about one word called motions. Remember, if you recall, if some of you all were present in my session yesterday, you all would have realized that there is this one statement that the executive board members continuously reiterate during committee. And that statement is any points or motions on the floor. That statement is essentially any points or motions on the floor. What does this essentially mean? It means that what would you as a committee like to do in the session? Where would you like to take the conversation, discussion, and deliberation? This is what this statement that the chairperson saying essentially translate to. So there is this one thing called motion. All right. Motion is essentially an initiation. Motion is basically saying I am proposing to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z things. Motion is essentially saying, hey, you know what? Let's begin XYZ things in the committee. One type of motion and how the conference officially starts, how the discussions officially start is motion to set an agenda, motion to set the agenda. So basically, once everybody's seated, once everybody's given their attendance, a roll call is done, we've analyzed that okay, we have more than 1/4 of the delegates in the committee, we can begin with the motion to set the agenda. Now, in many conferences, in all of our committees, rather, at least in Hearts MUN, we have one agenda per committee, correct? In some cases, in certain conferences, maybe in the Chennai circuit, in the college level circuit, there are sometimes a case when you have two agendas in every committee that are being discussed. So that is why this particular procedure or tool of discussion is essentially there. However, since we all have just one agenda associated with each committee, we will essentially, any one of us will simply raise our placard, say motion to set the agenda, say the name of the agenda that you are basically a part of. Say, for example, we are in UNSC. I am the delegate of, say, Pakistan. I'll raise my placard when the chairperson says any points or motions on the floor after taking the attendance. I will raise my placard and I will say what is mentioned in your rules of procedure. In your rules of procedure, in italics, motion to set the agenda, which in this case will be the India-Pakistan conflict over Kashmir. This is essentially what setting the agenda essentially means. It basically means that, hey, you know what? We're all here. Our attendance is done. Let's begin with the discussions and deliberations on the agenda. As always, everything in committee, if you recall, goes through something called informal vote. Just because I have raised my placard and I have proposed to set the agenda, that does not necessarily mean committee might be necessarily ready for it. So informal voting will take place. The chairpersons will ask all those for setting the agenda, please raise your placards. Of course, major, absolutely everybody should ideally raise their placards because that's what we've come to discuss, correct? And then the chairperson, as a formality, will once again ask all those opposing the discussion of this motion or initiation of this motion, please raise your placards. Based on simple majority, more than 50% people agree in the committee, this motion is in order and the agenda is officially set in your committee, and committee formal proceedings have now begun. This is essentially how your committee starts. Just to summarize, we all come and sit down in our desks. There is the roll call that essentially takes place. We raise our placards, say present and voting. We analyze, attendance is complete. We have more than 1/4 people. The first dialogue that the chairperson will put across is any points or motions on the floor. At that junction time, we'll raise a placard, motion to set the agenda. Any one of us, any one of you in your committee, raise your placard, motion to set the agenda, so and so and so and so, whatever the agenda of your committee necessary is. It will go through informal voting, simple majority by a show of placards. Once it passes, committee officially begins. Now that we are in committee, I want you to visualize, okay? I want you to visualize. We are sitting in committee, the agenda is set. How do the discussions essentially begin? How do the discussions begin? The first thing that it essentially begins is the next point we're going to be discussing. It's called the general speakers list. What is this general speakers list? How does it work? And what needs to be shared in a GSL, in a conventional general speakers list at large? This is what I want to talk to you about. So, general speakers list is essentially an introductory speech, you could say, where you give a brief insight into what the problem is that you're discussing and any two or three proposed solutions along with what you as a country, what stance you all basically are with. So, say for example, the India Pakistan Kashmir issue. I'm using this example again and again because I'm sure majorly everybody would be familiar with the Kashmir issue out here, irrespective whether you're part of the same committee or not. Now, when you talk about the Kashmir issue, we have multiple delegates in the committee. We've got India, we've got Pakistan, we've got USA, we've got Russia, we've got China, we've got Turkey, all of these different countries. In the general speakers list, what needs to be done is an introductory address needs to be given. It's like an introductory speech where for maybe 30 or 40 seconds you share that, hey, I'm the delegate of India and I'd like to share with the rest of the committee that it has been deliberated over the last 75 plus years, ever since independence, that Kashmir has always been a part of India and shall continue being so. We would like to condemn the actions of Turkey and China in their support towards Pakistan and the military support towards Pakistan as well. And we strongly advise, as a country, India, not to support countries advocating and breeding terrorism in their lands. This is what an example of an general speaker's list speech is. Very improv, very natural, very impromptu from my end. You could take some time preparing, but what I'd strongly advise you to do, okay, in a general speaker's list speech is don't go to your parents or your teachers or chat gpt and draft like a entire speech, copy paste and read it out without understanding what you say. See, mun is not necessarily about you know um, using big words like Dr. Shashi Tharoor. It's all about creative solving, problem solving, right? It's about critical thinking and innovative solutions to different world problems. So, what we like you to do, speak in your own words. Speak in the words that you are comfortable and you would normally speak it. We do understand that you are in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and even 12th grade for that matter. So, essentially, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to have this speech drafted where you don't mug up something or read it out from a piece of paper, but maybe you could have something like cue cards, all right? I would like you to have something like cue cards or just basically pointers which you could emphasize on your own in your own words. The idea is what? The idea behind a general speakers list speech is to showcase to the entire committee of those 20, 30, 40 people that, hey, you know what? I'm the delegate of ABC country. This is what I believe in and my country believes in, and showcase your stance. Basically, the idea is to give an introductory speech, highlight the problem in maybe two or three sentences, and showcase whether you are for, against, or neutral towards the agenda being discussed. Why is this important? Because India must recognize Russia and Russia must recognize India in the committee. Similarly, if you are the delegate of Pakistan, it is essential for you. It is essential for you. It is essential for you. Sorry, I was just clearing the spam in the chat. So it is essential for you to recognize your allies. So if I'm the delegate of Pakistan, I need to realize that China and Turkey are my friends in committee. They may not be my friends in real life. They may not be my allies in real life, but in the committee, they are my friends. They are my allies. So many people, I'll be honest with you on one thing, my friends. General speakers, this is applicable across all committees. Huh? It's not just UNSC because I'm giving that example across all committees. What I am trying to tell you what I am trying to tell you is that in the GSL, we all generally focus on our own speeches so much that we don't listen We don't listen to what the other delegates are trying to say. The purpose of GSL is to understand position, to understand alignment, to understand stance. It is for me and you in that committee when it initiates to realize that, hey, you know what? In this committee, Security Council, or in FAO, or in ABC committee, these countries are my allies. They are my friends, and so and so and so and so people are my enemies. And these are the people who are neutral towards the agenda that need to be convinced. They need to be convinced to take my side. So when you are part of GSM, as much as you may be super excited, as am I, in any conference that I've been to, I've been always excited to speak, no doubt. But it is also essential. It is also essential for us to listen. It is also essential for us to listen because it is the most important time during the committee for us to understand who our allies and who our enemies are, and who the people who are neutral that require convincing to join our team. This is what the importance, essence, and objective of General Speakers List essentially is. Just to summarize for you once again, GSL is essentially where you have to give an introductory speech, how your country is associated to the agenda, what are the problems you have identified and problems your country is facing, if any, and whether you are for, against, or neutral towards the agenda. This is what needs to be done. You will all have a notepad in your conference kits as well. In that conference kits, what I want each and every one of you to do, I want you to create one table. In that table, there should be four. They should be allies, enemies, and neutral. When you hear everybody's general speaker's speech, you need to position them. Okay, Russia, my friend, ally. China, not my friend, enemy. Faroe Islands, neutral towards the entire agenda, neutral. What you need to do is, apart from just giving your speech in general speakers list, you must also identify and place the other countries in your committee in the right slot, in the right table: allies, enemies, neutral. This is what you must essentially do in your general speakers list speech. Again, reiterating on one fact, please, for heaven's sake, don't go to mom, dad, brother, or sister, or tuition teacher, or class teacher, or AI to draft some 90-second, you know, speech which nobody's going to listen to. Keep it short, keep it crisp, keep it to the point, and keep it impactful and keep it insightful. So when somebody hears you for that 60 to 90 seconds, they can easily identify who you are, what your country is, what your stance is, whether you are an ally, enemy, or neutral towards the agenda. This is one very important thing in the conference. The entire level of your discussions, the entire level of your deliberations will be based. This is the foundation of your discussions. Until you don't identify the countries divided into these three different tables, you will not be able to take your discussions forward towards problem solving. Please always remember this one thing, that it is quintessential for you not to just give a speech, but also to identify at the same time. And please don't confuse. Many people confuse MUN for public speaking. It's not public speaking. You don't have to be the best speaker in the world, but you should have the best content. You should have your crystal clear content and information that you share in committee in a nutshell. This is what your general speakers list speech is all about. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is something which is called yields. Okay, so if you notice, general speakers list speech is a 90-second speech where you give your introductory speech and so on. However, however, if you do not complete your 90 seconds. If you still have more time, you can use that time productively. You can use that time productively. How? By using the word yields. By using the word yields. How does this work? There are three types of yields. So if you have 10, 15, 20 seconds left, you can do two types of yields. One is called yield to questions. What does yield to questions essentially mean? It means that you have given a speech, you have shared your stance, whatever it is that you wanted to share. You notice there may be some query, some question from other delegates, some clarification they might want from you. That they might want from you that, hey, Prashant made this statement, delegate or so and so made this statement. Why did he make this statement? What is the grounds on he made this statement? If you feel that there are some delegates in your committee, based on what you said, may have some questions, you can simply yield to questions. Then the chairperson will recognize the people who can ask you questions, the delegate who can ask you questions. They will ask you questions and you will need to answer them. This is what yield to questions essentially is. The second type of yield is yield to another delegate. The second time is yield to another delegate. Suppose you have given a speech for 60 seconds and say I'm India and I have given a speech for 60 seconds. I have 30 seconds remaining. To reinforce my speech, I can give it to my ally. I can give it to my friend. How do I recognize my friends? From my table. So I have given a speech for 60 seconds as India. I have 30 seconds left. I will take the 30 seconds and I will yield that time to the delegate of Russia, saying, hey, you know what? I have placed these strong points in committee right now. We still have some time left. We are on the same team. You take these 30 seconds and reinforce these points in the committee. That is when you can yield to another delegate. It is not necessary, my friends, it is not necessary that you need to by mandatory yield it to of ally. You can even yield it to your enemy as well by saying, hey, Pakistan is breeding terrorism, Pakistan is paying taxpayers' money on military expenses rather than welfare of society, and really holding Pakistan accountable in that speech of yours as delegate of India. If you're confident, you can yield that time to Pakistan also. Well, Pakistan will have to then speak after the different pointers you have, hammered down in the committee at large. So this is what yield to another delegate essentially is. And the third type of yield, in case you're confused on what to do, you can yield to the chairperson, which basically means that, hey, boss, I'm confused how I should yield my time. I'm not so sure. No problem. Yield to the chairperson. Let the chairperson, highly experienced, let them decide for you what is the best way to go about using the remainder of your time. This is what essentially yields essentially are. This goes hand in hand with the general speakers list. Just to summarize once again, we've given our general speakers list speech. We have some time left. We can use that time productively. First type of yield is yield to questions, where other people in committee can ask you questions. These can be your allies, these can be your enemies, and these can even be the neutral countries that you want to get convinced and be a part of your team. The second type of yield is yield to another delegate, which basically means you have given a speech, you want somebody to reinforce what you said, or you want to hold somebody accountable based on what you have said, you can yield to another delegate. And the third type of yield is in case you are doubtful on what should be the right way, you should yield to the chairperson. These are essentially the three types of yields in the conference and in this rules of procedure called yields. Next up, we have one of the most important tools of discussion in an MUN conference, that is known as moderated caucus. That is known as moderated caucus. What is moderated caucus? Okay, remember, majorly your discussion is going to go in a cycle of moderated caucuses and unmoderated caucuses. After you finish considerably the general speakers list and yield, your primary discussions will flow between moderated caucus and unmoderated caucus. What does this essentially mean? Now, moderated caucus is essentially a detailed discussion on a subtopic of the main agenda. Let me explain this to you in a way you will find it easy to understand. Let's say, for example, you have a geography textbook. Okay. In that geography textbook, you have different chapters: chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, so on. All five chapters, when you compile them together, that is your full geography subject, full geography textbook. Similarly, the agenda is like your geography textbook. And this vast, diverse agenda has many sub-agendas. Just like your textbook has many chapters, like that your agenda has many issues, many problems, many things that need to be discussed. To discuss it in an organized way, we break it down into different subtopics or sub-agendas. And each one of the sub-agendas are discussed in the moderated caucus. Are discussed in the moderated caucus. This is essentially what your moderated caucus essentially is. Just to emphasize it on it further, it is a type of debate where a detailed discussion on a subtopic of the agenda takes place. How do you initiate it? This is also a type of motion. Do you remember we had motion to set the agenda? Like that, moderated caucus is also a type of motion. So, any delegate at any point of time during the committee, when the chairperson repeats that statement, any points or motions on the floor, can raise your placard, say motion to set the agenda, so and so and so and motion to set moderated caucus on subtopic ABC XYZ, whatever subtopic that you need. Let me think of an example. Mm, Let me have a look at the agendas. So, human and environmental costs of fast fashion. Let's take this as an example now. We should have it diverse, right? So, when we're discussing human and environmental impacts of fast fashion, I can raise my placard and say, motion to open a moderated caucus, motion to open a moderated caucus to discuss the pollution caused by textile manufacturing factories for total time 8 minutes, time per speaker 1 minute. This is what I have proposed to discuss in the committee. This is what I have proposed to discuss in committee in the form of a moderated caucus topic. It's basically like chapter 1 we are discussing in geography textbook. Again, replying, chairperson will say one statement, any points or motions on the floor. You will essentially raise your placard, motion to open a moderated caucus to discuss pollution caused by the textile manufacturing units for total time length 8 minutes, time per speaker 1 minute. Now, just because I have proposed to have this discussion, just because I have proposed to have this discussion in committee, that does not necessarily mean that everybody else wants to do it. So, like every other motion, this will also go through something called an informal vote, where the chairperson will say, all those delegates wanting to discuss this particular moderated caucus, kindly raise your placards. Those delegates in my committee who feel, hey, you know what, this is an important subtopic, this is an important chapter, let's discuss it, they will raise a placard. And those, then the chairperson will ask all those opposing this discussion, please raise your placard. Those delegates will essentially raise their placard at that point of time. And based on simple majority, Based on the simple majority, once again, either a discussion will pass, that moderated caucus will be action in committee, or will fail. This is essentially what your motion to moderated caucus essentially is. Motion to open a moderated caucus essentially is. Very, very, very important thing during the conference. What I'd like you to do, task for you, my friends, if you all are listening to me, I hope you all are paying attention. Um, Task for all of you, whichever committee you are in, whichever committee you are, you need to formulate or you need to ideate any 6 to 8 moderated caucus that you can introduce in committee. What is moderated caucus? Detailed discussion on subtopic of main agenda. So the agenda is a big problem, right? And a lot of problems, smaller problems contribute to this big problem. If you go to see, like for example, when we talk about preserving biodiversity, it's not just one single issue that causes this problem of climate change and destruction of biodiversity. It's a combination of multiple problems that has led to this really big problem. Now we need to discuss all the problems in a structured format. This is done through moderated caucus. So what your task is, your homework is, whatever committee you are part of, whatever agenda you are discussing, you need to do a little bit of research. Look at the research you have done yesterday and today and formulate 6 to 8 moderated caucus that you can introduce in committee to discuss. You should be prepared with this one thing, because almost 60% of your time, 60 to 65% of your time in committee, 60% you could say, will go in the discussions of moderated caucuses. Please bear this in mind at all times. We'll go in detailed discussions of these moderated caucuses. The next thing that I want to talk about, and like I said, just to once again reiterate, just because you are introducing the motion, just because you have initiated it, no matter how good it is or how important it is, if the committee does not vote for it, then the motion will fail. Which brings me back to the general speakers list, which on that table that I told you about, where you must discuss things not only that is selfish and relevant to you as a country, but you must discuss those things that affect the world as a global family, that affect the world at large, not just your country. Your own internal issues is one thing, but let's be honest, Faroe Islands is not concerned too much about the Indian issues at large. They are concerned more on an international scale. So keep your allies close with you, because those are the people who are only going to vote for you. Like how in student council we had couple of months ago, we had student council elections, everybody was voting. You have to be convincing, and you have to not only look at your own requirements or your own wants or your own solutions, but you must take into consideration the committee at large before introducing different motions in the conference. This is one thing you all must keep in mind at all times. This is what you call moderated caucus. 60% of your time, my dear friends, is going to go in the discussions of your moderated caucuses. 60%. Now, generally, after moderated caucus, the flow generally goes into unmoderated caucus. So there's like this cycle, okay? Moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus, moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus. 80% of your time is spread between these two tools of debate. This is the crux of MUN. What I'm explaining to you right now is the crux of MUN. Everything else is different tools of debate and identification, analysis, stand showcasing, and so on. But the crux of the MUN lies between the cycle of moderated caucuses and unmoderated caucus. So, what is unmoderated caucus? Unmoderated caucus is essentially an informal session where you can decide or discuss about a problem informally before officially sharing your thoughts in front of everybody in committee. So you know how when you have, say for example, football, in halftime we have like a timeout, and we go to our respective dressing rooms, the different teams, they plan and strategize amongst themselves, and then they come out for the second half. Similarly, during basketball and NBA, right, we have timeouts in between where the entire team comes up in a huddle, discusses strategy, and then decides to go back and start playing again. Unmoderated caucus is meant for this, as well as other things which I'm going to explain, of course. But one of the things that unmoderated caucus is used for is for strategizing your roadmap ahead. It is where not only you do this alone, but do you remember I told you there's one table you need to make in general speakers list: allies, enemies, and neutral countries? During this unmoderated caucus period, you can get up. You can get up from your chairs where you are seated, sit with your allies, approach your enemies, approach the neutral countries, try to convince them to come with you, plan out your roadmap ahead, say, hey, you know what, how are we going to implement this? How do you think we're going to get the votes? The 30 people in committee require votes, right? So how are you going to strategize these different things? How are you going to form alliances? How you're going to, engage in backdoor diplomacy? All of these different things are done during the process of your unmoderated caucuses. During your unmoderated caucuses. So this is one thing that you do in unmoderated caucus. The second thing that you do in unmoderated caucus is for drafting your solutions. I will I will emphasize on the solutions at a later time, but unmoderated caucus is used for two things. One is to engage with your blocks. Two is to convince the neutral people to join you. Third is to form diplomatic arrangements with your enemies. And four is to strategize your allies, your blocks, your team's roadmap forward. Because please remember, my dear friends, in MUN, you may be the best speaker, the best debater, the most innovative solutions. But if you don't have the backing, if you don't have the votes, it's of no consequence. And how do you form these blocks? How do you strengthen these blocks? How do you negotiate these blocks? Where do you do it? One is, of course, in your lobbying groups, which you'll have joined yesterday, and two is in your unmoderated caucus, which happens during your committees on the days of the conference. This is what you call an unmoderated caucus. How do you do it? This again, just like setting an agenda and moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus once again is a type of motion. Again, the chairperson repeats one thing continuously. Any points or motions on the floor, you as a delegate will raise your placard. Okay, you as a delegate will raise your placard. Motion to open an unmoderated caucus for a time period, maybe 10 to 15 minutes at best, and that's about it. Then once again, just because you or I or anybody in committee has proposed this unmoderated caucus does not necessarily mean that it is required to take place in committee. It will be put through the informal vote. It will be put through the informal voting. Based on that, if majority agree, the unmoderated caucus will essentially pass. So this is your third type of motion called unmoderated caucus. 75% of your time in committee, let me tell you again, 75% of time in your committee will circulate and cycle between moderated caucuses and unmoderated caucuses. This is what the crux, essence, and primary flow of MUN essentially is. Your moderated caucus. Break down your agenda, that big problem of conflict over Kashmir, that big problem of, you know, your big problem of Arctic sovereignty, your big problem of global debt, your big problem of global Cuban Missile Crisis needs to be broken down into the smaller contributing problems. And each contributing issue has to be discussed in detail. These contributing issues, when discussed in detail, they are discussed through the tool of a moderated caucus. In between these moderated caucuses, you all will have the unmoderated caucuses. Time for you to be diplomatic, time for you to draft solutions, time for you to convince people, time for you to engage with people, time for you to strategize, time for you to be diplomatic. This is what happens in your unmoderated caucus. So, how does the flow essentially happen? You have your general speakers list, you have your yields, you have identified who's in which team, and then you flow into your mod and unmod caucuses throughout the entire committee and discussion sessions. This is what the crux of MUN and Hearts MUN and MUN at large essentially is. Points is something we covered yesterday. Another type of motion, if you look at point number 20 in the rules of procedure, another type of motion is something which is called one for, one against, and two for versus two against. This is essentially where countries have a, you could say, bilateral or quadrilateral discussion on a multilateral forum. Simple English, what does this mean? There are actually 30 people in your committee from 30 different countries. Okay, there are 30 different students from 30 different countries. When only two countries are debating with each other, or maximum four countries debating with each other on the floor of committee, it is known as a one for, one against, or two versus two. How it's basically like, how do you say? Arnab Goswami, for example, where there is like heated discussion and debate that we see on TV. Parents may be seeing it on prime time. It's something like that. It's when there's really heated tensions and real difference of opinion between two extreme countries. Say, for example, India, Pakistan, uh, Turkey, and Russia. Four of these people directly, strongly involved in conflict over Kashmir. When they have want to debate amongst themselves, any delegate can raise a placard because it's a type of motion and say motion for one against with or two for two against with the delegates of A, B, C, and D countries for a maximum time of 3 minutes. Then, just because somebody has proposed it, that does not mean it will take place in committee. It will be going through the voting. It will be going through the voting. If majority think that, hey, you know what, this is an important debate to have, it's a matter of 3 minutes, then this motion will be in order and will take place. And here's the most interesting part. Here is the most interesting part. That suppose I am delegate of Pakistan and somebody has raised this two for two against motion in the committee with me, Turkey, India, and Russia. Even though me as Pakistan, I don't want to be part of this debate because the committee has voted for it, because there is majority in the committee saying, even though I've raised my placard saying, no, I don't want to do this, but majority has said I want to do it, even then, as delegate of Pakistan, I will be liable to come to committee and actually be a part of this motion as well. This, my dear friends, is another type of motion called one for, one against, or two versus two. The next thing is something which is called joint statement. The next thing, which is something which is called joint statement. A joint statement is essentially when two countries come together and make a statement in committee. For example, India and Italy, like our prime minister and Italian prime minister, are great friends. So sometimes they issue joint statement on world issues, maybe about global debt, Trump tariffs, India, France, India, European Union, India and the UK recently issued a joint statement on, opening the doors of trade between our countries. So when two countries come together, it should be relevant. If two countries come together to issue a statement in the committee, This is known as a joint statement. This is known as a joint statement. Next up, we have something which is called presidential statement. Presidential statement is essentially where you where you assume yourself not to just be a diplomat anymore. Where you assume yourself not to just be a diplomat anymore, but to also be the head of that state, the head of that country, the head of that, the prime minister or president of that particular country you are representing. This essentially puts you up on a pedestal. Basically, everybody is a diplomat. But when you raise your placard and say presidential statement, you are putting yourself on a above hierarchy as opposed to other delegates in the committee, where you assume yourself or the committee has to recognize you now as the head of that state, as the prime minister or president of the country you're representing. And because you are the head of the state, you will be given a priority to speak in the committee at any time of your choice. At any time of your choice. However, however, remember one thing. If this if this tool if this tool is misused, you could get a lot of negative marks. If you use this tool in the correct way, you can even get positive marks. Let me explain to you the importance and when to use it. Say, for example, we are staying in Chennai, okay, and because of the rains outside my house, the road which is there, lot of potholes have come because of the rain. Because of that, I am not going to be calling up Chief Minister MK Stalin or Prime Minister Narendra Modi, correct? The person's jurisdiction for that road outside my house which is damaged is my local MLA, is my local MP, MLA, the local MP who's in charge of that ward of that area. So if I decide to call up Chief Minister or Prime Minister saying, boss, outside my house there are too many potholes because of the rain, you will get a healthy amount of negative marking. You will get a healthy amount of negative marking. Because you see, when you are assuming yourself to be the Prime Minister or President of a particular country, you must also ensure that the thing that you're going to talk about, the topic you're going to discussing about is going to suit the profile or the office or the chair of a prime minister or president. So don't misuse this thing, because you should not come back and say tomorrow that, hey, you know what, I was so good at my discussions and debate, but I didn't win best delegate. This could be a reason what would make you miss out on your prize, because you have misused the rules of procedure just to speak in committee by assuming yourself to be prime minister or president and not speaking about issues which are relevant to the stature of the person you are representing. So please keep this in mind. It's a very powerful tool as well. It's a very, very powerful tool as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not demotivating you towards using it. It's at the same point of time a very powerful tool if it is used in the right, is all I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to say. Next up, we have something called round robin discussions. Round robin discussions are basically ambiguous discussions where all members will give speeches as per roll call order. So basically, it is, you could say like an extension of a GSL where people could speak about anything that they like during this period of time. It may not be, structured like a general speaker's list. It can be voicing their opinions on anything related to the agenda during the course of discussions. These are the different debate rules that are essentially there. These are the different debate rules that are essentially there. Just to summarize, we have discussed primarily general speakers list, which is how your committee starts and your introductory speech. We have discussed about the yields, which is yield to chair, questions, and another delegate. And we have discussed the different types of motions, like how yesterday we discussed the 5 different points. Today we've discussed the 5 different motions. Motion is when we want to initiate something in the committee. This is what essentially motion ideally is. Motions that we discuss The main two motions that your committee will be centered around is moderated and unmoderated caucuses. And we have discussed about one for one against, so two versus two, as well as your joint statements and presidential statements and round robin discussions, which is basically decided by the chairperson. Finally, we will come to the paperwork. Finally, we will come to the paperwork. The first thing we're going to discuss, my dear friends, is a working paper. Is a working paper. What is a working paper? A working paper is a solution, unstructured solution in simple point form, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, that's it. Is an unstructured solution to a subtopic of the main agenda. If you recall, few minutes ago, I have told you about moderated caucus, which is the detailed discussion on the subtopics. These subtopics are the contributing problems to your total agenda. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, all are discussed and studied in moderated caucus. Similarly, in MUN, every subtopic or sub-problem of the main agenda is discussed in moderated caucus. Once we discuss, once we discuss the sub-problem, the sub-agenda in the moderated caucus, we generally break for the unmoderated caucus. It is at this time, after discussing that subtopic, we find a solution on that subtopic. And that solution is known as a working paper. How do you write a working paper? It is really simple, my friends. In fact, I'm just going to locate, I'm sure I have on my computer an example of a working paper. Yes, here it is. So, how do you write a working paper? All you need to basically do is after your moderated caucus, you break into unmoderated caucus. What you have discussed what you have discussed in your moderated caucus, that sub problem, you will sit with your block and maybe the other block and neutral block as well and try to solve that subtopic. If you recall, I gave you example of the pollution being caused by the textile manufacturing units. We have discussed how this textile industry is polluting the environment. After we've discussed this problem and voiced our opinions in committee, it's time for us to sit down collaboratively now and find a solution to it. This solution to just a textile problem will be called a working paper. And as you may see on your screens, very simply you will just write your sub agenda. Out here it will be written what? It will be written pollutions caused by the textile industry, and simply point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, point 6, point 7, point 8. How many ever points? Your choice and your committee choice. This is very simply put what a working paper essentially is. There is no structured format to it. There is no structured format to it. Did you not be able to see it, my friends? Just let me begin. Yes, is it visible to you now? Because it's showing to me live over here. Okay, no problem. Maybe it's not permitting me to share the screen. So what I will do, yes, you can see it now. Fantastic. So this is what it is. Essentially, to simply write your committee, your agenda, and your sub agenda, and then just the different points of what your proposed solution is. That's it. No format, as you can write it as point 1, point 2, point 3. You can write it as bullet point. Whatever you are comfortable with, you can write it as that. There is no structured format. Idea is what we have discussed one sub problem, which was how the textile industry is causing pollution. What our objective after that is, now that we know that this is the problem that the textile industry is causing, what we are going to do to solve it. This is essentially what a working paper is. This working paper after unmoderated caucus will be submitted to chairperson. Chairperson will then essentially put this to vote. Chairperson can then put this to vote. Then, just because I and Ashwath and S.A. Yathur and Adya and Prafula and some of us have decided to draft this working paper and submit it in the thing for voting. That does not mean because we have created a solution, that solution is done. Because at the end of the day, again reiterating, everything boils down to the voting. Everything boils down to the voting. So that working paper will be put through the informal vote. And if more than 50% of people agree with the solution that any one of the teams or even neutral country is drafted, only then, only then will the working paper pass. Only then will the working paper pass. So, what is a working paper? To reiterate for you once again. Working paper is a solution on the subtopic. You have a major problem. That major problem is broken down into smaller problems that has created this major problem. Each of these smaller problems are discussed in moderated caucus, and each solution to the smaller problem is in fact created in a working paper. Is in fact created in a working paper in simple point form. Working paper, just because you and I have made it, that does not mean the world need to accept it. It will be put through the voting. It will be put through the voting. And based on the simple majority, that working paper will either pass or it will fail. This is what your working paper essentially is. So how will your cycle of MUN go? You will have your general speakers list, you will have your yields, you will have your general speakers list, you will have your yields, and you will follow a cycle. Moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus, moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus. During the moderated caucuses, you all will discuss the different contributing problems. During the unmoderated caucus, you all will lobby, negotiate, and be diplomatic with each other. At the same time, formulate solutions that take into consideration all the countries so it can be voted upon and passed in the committee. This is essentially what your working paper essentially is. The last thing that we need to complete over is something which is called resolution. But this I will explain to you tomorrow because I want to show you the entire format. It will not take more than 10 to 15 minutes, but this I will complete with you tomorrow. And at the same point of time, after that few minutes of explaining to you resolution, I will take all questions from the chat box over here. So students, your homework for today, as I've given you even yesterday, is create 6 to 8 moderated caucus topics, which is essentially 6 to 8 contributing sub problems to your main problem or main agenda. But all questions from the chat box, I know you'll have asked me 10 million questions. Please don't worry. Please note them down. Tomorrow, I will just take 10 to 15 minutes to explain to you resolution and just run through the rules of procedure really quickly. So you all will have a complete understanding of how committee is going to flow. And as much time as you want tomorrow, I will answer any and all questions. That's a promise. But in the meantime, please do complete the homework that I've given you. God bless you all. Have a lovely day and Nandri. See you tomorrow, same time. I will see whether that previous link will can be activated again, or I will be sharing with you an updated link. Thank you so much for everything. God bless you all. Bye bye.